Welcome again, everybody. After this lunch break, we are restarting the live streaming. As I've explained before, we are having now two parallel sessions. Here, we are going to have the session number 11, Inclusion for Employability and Entrepreneurship in Transport. And on GoToMeet, we will have session 12 on gender equity in education and research for transport.
Okay, I'll make a start. So welcome everybody to session 12. My word, we've had 12 sessions. Right, this one's on gender equity in education and research for transport. It's going to be 4 presentations. I'm making the first one, followed by my colleague, Kat Gutt from Coventry, and we're both been talking around gender and diversity in transport research. This will be followed by another colleague from TInnGO, XII, who doesn't seem to be here at the moment, from Smart Continent, and then one from Natasha Sager from Smart Venice, talking about building capacity on how to integrate a gender dimension in the content of scientific research and innovation, the GE Academy project experience. Right, so good afternoon, everybody. You all know me. I'm Andre Woodcock. I'm the PI of the TInnGO project. This work was a collaboration between myself, Miriam, Kat, and Stefan, with Miriam and Kat doing most of the work, I think. And this will lead nicely into Kat's presentation directly after this. And I've lost my little things. Okay. How do we get rid of that GoToMeeting load of rubbish at the corner? Can we close that? No. Okay. Half my slides are obliterated by all the GoToMeeting buttons. So
I think there is a way of minimizing it, but maybe Etienne can help.
Collapse. No, collapse hasn't done me much good. Okay, it just obliterates this half of the text. Okay, hopefully I've not got much on that side. Right, okay then, so what we're talking about this afternoon is looking at gender and diversity in research teams. And this is a key issue in terms of the future of funding going forward. What I'll talk about first of all is diversity in the higher educational institute sector in the UK, followed by some small bits of research that we conducted as part of the larger lit review in TInnGO and a survey that we conducted with PIs as well. We have published this work before, so it's a very brief overview of what we've been doing, and the focus is going to be on the recommendations towards the end of the project, towards the end of the presentation. So what is key to understand about this is my concept of the wicked, my application of the idea of wicked problems. So research sits within a context, and that context for many of us is the higher education institute. So diversity in these organisations is reflected in the student demographics, but not in the staff. So we can see for the UK that women form 29% of vice chancellors, 37% of exec team members, 31% of heads of departments, and 25% of the professors. Looking at this in more detail, 95% of the vice chancellors in the top 50 UK universities are white, and only 6% are from a Black, Asian, and minority ethnic background. So I know we're talking about gender, but we also need to address the wider diversity issues. The focus has been on gender, first of all. Maybe we're hoping to see that that will transfer to wider diversity in terms of people from BAME backgrounds. I don't know. We've not been too successful in looking at gender diversity, let alone transferring best practices to wider inclusivity. Now, why is this important? It's because these people, these largely white middle-class males, are the ones who are controlling the culture, operation, and focus of our universities. So we found that a discriminatory culture is widely present and is also more heavily prevalent in male-dominated disciplines like transport. So we're getting a series of effects like the Matilda effect, where women's research is more undervalued than men, maternity penalties, so we don't get full acknowledgement for maternity leaves, full pay. This goes for paternity as well. There's an unfair allocation of service duties. So the extra work, the extra joining and servicing of committees that fall on women. It's an expectation that, oh, someone else can do it, and that's normally a woman. And while she's doing these very worthy exercises, she's actually not doing her research. There's definitely a boys' club culture. This is evidenced in a lot of the cliquiness around the research centres, and also maybe where they go, the sort of extracurricular activities they take on board, or sort of out of work, oh, they all go to the pub or other places. There's a bias in human resources functions which goes across the the HEI sector, looking at gender pay gaps, glass ceilings, and complaints processes, where the complaints processes are not probably secret, or it's if you make a complaint against a male colleague, you're seen as being difficult. Female leadership skills, and we all know that female leaders have a different way of operating. We're more collegiate, more cooperative. They're not really appreciated in terms of the way in which these communities operate. So why is lack of diversity at the top important? It's important because it's about who's controlling the narrative. And as I've said already, the people who control the narrative are from a very small sector of society. They set the agendas, they set the research priorities, they may set the agenda for the whole university. They devise strategies, and they control the board members as well. So this is really important if you want to raise new things that are outside of their sphere of influence. They also control the research teams and the networks within them. They're responsible for the peer reviewing for papers and grants. They're also responsible for setting workplace culture and what ideas are promoted. So there's a series of biases here, and I wish Anne-Marie was present because she would talk more about biases. So affinity, alienation, situational, and identity biases in terms of human resource issues. And I think we can all understand this. We'd like to promote people who think like ourselves, who are working in our own field of endeavour. But when this field of endeavour and this interest is held by a very small group of males, it's very difficult to break through this barrier. Examples of gender differences. So we looked at the TRB, Transport Research Board awards system, and we conducted an analysis of the gender of 921 winners of the 14 awards since 1931, and found that only 17% were given to women. 20% of women were among the 663 excellent paper authors. 14% of women were among the 173 winners of a recognition of exceptional achievement and service awards, and only 4% of women were among the 85 winners of joint awards. So the transport sector is trying very hard to do something with diversity, and the TRB is actually really active in this, but even so, we can see this bias. Looking at women in European transport projects, the analysis of 142 projects on the TRIMIS open access database showed that just 63% of the projects had a weak connection to women's issues, 2% only addressed women's issues, and of the 769 researchers participating in the 21 EU H2020 transport-related projects, only 2% were female. And of the 53% of the research with an educational background in engineering, only 19% of these were women. Again, looking in more detail at this is important because we need to understand how this is influencing the sort of projects that get funded and the sort of topics that are put forward. Looking at the TInnGO analysis of gender of project coordinators, which was conducted by Miriam, she found that 32% of these were led by a woman, and the women acting as a project coordinator ranged from 17% in innovation actions to 37% in research and innovation actions. And as I've said, this isn't just about who's getting the awards, it's about who's controlling what is being awarded. So understanding how gender and diversity shape proposals and the contribution of those of different genders to shaping and conducting the research would add substantially to the knowledge base about the role of women in research and innovation in transport. And some of this information is being collected. It's very difficult to find it, and Miriam did really well finding some of it. But also, a lot of this information is gathered. What's happening to it? Can we do more about this and take it more seriously? Because each of these proposals, even if they weren't funded, represent an enormous amount of effort and the best knowledge of the people around there. So maybe we could do more retrospective analysis of these. Sorry. As part of our research, we conducted a survey just before the start of COVID of women researchers in European projects. This diagram represents part of that, the findings of that research, but also the findings from the literature review as well. And what I've done here is map these factors that we found onto the hexagon spindle model of educational ergonomics, which I must admit is my own model that I developed, and I've been stuck with it for the last 2 or 3 decades at least. But what we're seeing here is that there are a vast amount of barriers to women's progress. And these aren't in the contextual sector. They're not about the task design, how to do the work itself, but they're located in organizational and personal sectors as well. And these are something we can do. These are things we can do something about. So going very briefly onto the recommendations and solutions from this work, I've grouped these in terms of who the recommendations are aimed at. In terms of higher education institutes, we need to realign the core objectives to develop a more holistic approach to diversity of staff and students. This has to be a starting point if you're developing a gender and diversity analysis. Everything within a university is aligned to its core objectives. So getting gender and diversity as part of the core objectives of the institution is a good starting point, because they don't work on things that aren't aligned to the core objectives. Trying to convince them to perform a GADAP is useful, to find the metrics, to regularly update this and actually make it visible so we know what they're working on, what are the gender and diversity action plans, what are the key performance indicators, and where's the lack of diversity. And then they could start transferring best practices to create an environment more welcoming for females, eliminating the gender pay gap, understanding the female pipeline and progression, creating meaningful mentorship programs for women. There are mentorship programs, but these have been severely criticised. Reducing gender bias in recruitment, ensuring inclusivity of all events, and develop a non-prejudicial complaints procedure, and reduce disproportionate allocation of service duties. For the research centres, which sit within this wider network, you need to provide training for research managers on how to manage diverse teams. These are really difficult things to manage, and if they're not managed well, the research is showing that people aren't satisfied and they don't perform to their best. But you need to create environments that end discrimination, harassment, and gender bias. Put in place methods to reduce the motherhood penalty, actively promote and recognise the achievement of female staff, ensure all research projects generate, use and provide sex disaggregated data for analysis, conduct a capability audit on research staff regarding their familiarisation with data segregated analysis, and develop training material that promotes this. For funding bodies, these should lead by example, provide training for the staff and PIs so that they can understand the effects of diversity, require a named and weighted section on proposals and final reports relating to gender. There are some, and there are sections within the final reports and proposals relating to gender, but I don't think this is actually taken very seriously or into account and weighted. More of a need to understand the links between the diversity of the team and the research questions and how the proposal was actually developed. Can provide training for evaluators on gender and diversity and incentivize gender equitable research consortia. As I've said already, there is a wealth of material in previous proposals from which we could produce more recommendations and guidelines. And lastly, I think there should be a new qualification on research competency. So developing as a PR, you pick up skills along the way. When you think about how much is invested in these research projects, you need to ensure that you're getting the best out of them. And I think there is a need for some sort of qualification, probably based on a portfolio that could actually develop these skills. And as part of this, specific areas could focus on sex, gender, and intersectional analysis. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that the EU transport research sector is forward-thinking and trying to address the issues of gender and diversity. But the top-down approaches that are so commendable haven't actually met by changes in practice in the wider research sector. And there's also a notable lack of interest in other forms of diversity, such as culture, ethnic, racial, and ableness. So thank you very much. I hope that leads nicely into Kat's presentation. We'll be carrying on with this theme. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Henri. I'm now here. I'm the chair of the session. Unfortunately, I got the wrong link before or something, so I couldn't connect, but I'm here now, and we will go on with the program, which is Kat from Coventry University. She's a research assistant for the Transport Innovation Gender Observatory at Clean Growth and Future Mobility. Kat has also worked in community research at Birmingham University on the legacy of USIT project. The USIT program aims to link opportunities emerging from new urban development with local communities. And in her free time, she volunteers in the British Red Cross, where she works with refugees and asylum seekers. The word is yours, Kat. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lena, for such a lovely introduction. I cannot share my my screen. Etienne, can you allow me presenting? Can you make me a presenter? Thank you.
I think this is a new portal. It's not the same as we used in the morning.
I think it's slightly new, yes. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes,
Yes, Kat, I can, yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm going to give you a brief presentation on experiences of gender and diversity in research teams working on transport-related projects funded by EU. And just brief introduction to what the study entailed. We try to explore the lived experiences of principal investigators working or having recent experiences of working on pan-European projects funded by the European Commission under Horizon 2020. And the study, obviously, as you know, is a part of the TInnGO, which aim to achieve a paradigm shift in the role of women. And I think it fits really nicely to our agenda, or where we are going and how we are taking agenda forward, looking at project makeups and future project outputs. So aims of the study was to identify experiences, attitudes, and beliefs related to gender and diversity, not only in the research work and outputs, but also in the makeup, in the consortium, in the partners' representation, in research objectives and impacts. We were trying to identify challenges and barriers to implementation of gender and diversity mainstreaming in smart mobility related projects, and to identify needs for future policies and support for the research staff participating in those kind of collaborative pan-European projects. But before I will present the findings, just to give you a little bit of background, and obviously drawing on what Andres said, and gave really detailed explanation why the field, particularly in academia, but also in transport research, is still predominantly male and not really representative of the wider population. So gender and diversity disparities are still very persistent in academia, and that goes to transport-related research, that goes to smart mobility research, and lack of gender balance, especially in leadership positions, is because of all range of different overlapping factors like bias in hiring, bias in promotion, gender differences in research collaboration, gender differences in leadership, and then we have very strong bias in education in STEM, where we have all the time male professors and white male representatives, and there is not much representation for young women embarking on the career in smart mobility. And more importantly, women are less likely to be principal investigators. They have more impediments to career in academia, they have fewer research prizes, and they receive fewer invitations to be a keynote conference speaker. Again, this is all about the representation and how value and how much value is assigned to women's work and women's contribution to the field of smart mobility. So the method, as I mentioned, these were semi-structured interviews, unfortunately, all of them online, facilitated by Zooms, and I collected data in this year in spring. I had 3 males and 11 females. Each interview was around 1 hour, so they were really in-depth. I'm not going to discuss all of the themes that emerged. We had a lot of very great conversation about leadership, management style, mentorship, networking. For the purpose of this presentation, I will just discuss gender and diversity perception in the project and how much is it incorporated in agenda. So the first finding that really emerged from many interviews was that it's not only about the gender. It's also about different factors and characteristics such as age, nationality, background, professional status, disability, and they are influencing relationship within the consortium, relationship within the research team, and this can be really encapsulated in the quote here I have from one of the participants. Well, for example, given this context now, due to my age, I was advised not to lead the proposal writing, not to lead the consortium. In general, there are some comments due to my age. So it was always in combination with something. It was about gender and age. It was about gender and coming from the certain country. And that was just like overlapping factors perpetuating this bias and prejudice. Another finding was that gender and diversity in proposals is not really popular from the very beginning. And the reason is because the proposals are heavily influenced by the interests and expertise of people who are involved. And a lot of the time, people who are involved, they don't share passion or high awareness of gender and diversity issues in transport on smart mobility. So it depends on the research team members involved to what extent they decide to work on gendered issues. A majority of projects did not have gender and diversity equality agenda included, unless the project was really explicitly concerned with gendered mobility or vulnerable transport users, in which category women a lot of the time fall. And just to exemplify, I have very good quote from one of the participants, what happens with gender and diversity agenda at proposal stage. There's this paragraph that you always have to include in the proposals about gender diversity and gender equity. And it's not a big paragraph, it's very standard, so you normally copy it from somewhere else. But in the end, it's up to the people working on the proposals to actually think of specific things that could impact the equity and the inclusiveness. So of the project activities and also of what you are preaching, because you are teaching cities how to do stuff about planning, about mobility planning, and you should tell them to do it differently. Another question I had was concerned about gender and diversity dimensions in the project implementation, outputs, outcomes, impacts, and to what extent they take it forward. And a lot of my interviewees were really unclear on how gender and diversity dimensions in the projects are assessed. So no one knows how the diversity of consortium is measured, if it's monitored, if it's recorded, how does it translate into the outcomes and outputs impact of the project, of the research. I have one quote from another participant summarizing it. Nobody measures how the gender balancing of consortium actually impacts the results of the project and the outputs of the project. There is no measurement. Everything you measure in terms of impact, you just measure the impact. Nobody is actually considering it. We kind of all of the participants kind of agreed that yes, we are facing old problems. We are still not very well balanced in terms of gender and diversity, but we do need new ways of measuring. We do need more ways of measuring, more transparency, and more awareness about it. So there was a general recognition of the importance of the gender diversity agenda. That was both at organizational micro level and project level and institutional level. Many participants also highlighted the fact that if you are not representing yourself gender diversity or inclusivity, you cannot deliver quality projects related to transport sustainability or equality goals. So you do need to lead by example, and you should be very transparent about it. You should exemplify what have you done to advance work on inclusiveness within your organization, within your research team. And it was suggested that way forward was to make data-informed action more visible and to actually collect the data. And the data should be not only gender, but also diversity disaggregated, and it should be at many levels. So at micro level and macro level. Another quote summarizing it: we could do this by reading the material. That's how you do science. Looking at the facts and the figures. That's a good start. Recommendations. There were many recommendations coming out of interviews. I wanted to highlight only a couple of the most important. The recommendation for organizations that there should be a continuous commitment to gender and diversity agenda. So we should definitely conduct regular data collection on demographics of employees, but it's not only about numbers, it's about monitoring career trajectories. It's about monitoring who's getting grants, who's applying, who's successful and who's not successful, who's getting enough support in terms of networking. Access to networking was very important as it came from interviews. Mentorship, formal or informal, and different career pathways and how they are impacted by different life changes, and like motherhood, like having family, or starting family as a young researcher. Those are the things that should be also noted, and how they are affecting in the long term opportunities of future PIs. And also data should be disaggregated, obviously looking for intersectional lenses. So it's not only gender, ethnicity, but also disability, background, socioeconomic status. And we should look into department, seniority, and retention as well. Recommendation for the funding bodies. There is many recommendations for the funding bodies. Andrea already mentioned many of them. These are the ones that came out from interviews. And one of the things that was frequently mentioned, that to tackle this problem, we do need to have a very holistic approach. It's not only about disparities in academia, it's not only disparities in funding bodies and in research team makeup, it's about entire society. And those societal inequalities, they permeate into bias in education, in academia, in organizations, institutions, local authorities. Those inequalities, they permeate into the way we go around the cities. Then we have cities created by men and transport for men. And a lot of the things that came out really was touching a point around gender diversity mainstreaming, even if it wasn't named that way explicitly. This is what was coming out. Go back to incorporating gender diversity mainstreaming at every stage of the pipeline, and make it very transparent, especially when it comes to data collection on gender and diversity, because there is this perception it's a very soft topic and it's very difficult to measure, and no one really knows how it's measured and how it translates into research outputs and research team impact. So this should be really scanned in research objectives, team makeup, research footprints, outputs, in project implementation, and every stage of the project implementation and delivery, we should have this data monitored and then taken forward. To visualize a recommendation, I created interlocking action, a gear of change, and just to show and illustrate how funding bodies should lead by example and should be guided by gender and diversity mainstreaming, and they can really initiate the bigger movement and the bigger action by encouraging more inclusive and more gender sensitive approach to transport and research as a whole. So possible actions, they could include incentivizing diverse consortium and encouraging gender data and intersectional analysis in project outputs, and what I already mentioned, transparency in gender and diversity data. So measurements and impact assessments, specifically gender and diversity, from previous projects and proposals. And it was frequently mentioned that it's not only about successful proposals, because there is so much time and energy going into writing proposals that might not be at the end successful, but we can still use them and have like a retrospective analysis of that, so we can learn from them. And you can see probably on this visualization of recommendation how these are interlocking actions. So initiating one, each element is driven by tools and methods from gender and diversity mainstreaming, specifically gender data monitoring and implementing gender and diversity agenda into every stage of the project. Equitable research teams will produce more equitable research outputs, will have greater impact, and at the end, hopefully, maybe we will contribute to more inclusive transport ecosystem. Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you, Kat. And this links very well to what Andre also presented before. I think it's a very good picture you both have done here. And we move on to the next presenter on how to treat this in education, gender and equality in aspects through the process of education and its impact on transport sector in Baltic states. And it's Egla Kalisnikovic from Smart Continent who will present this. She works as an analyst in the Smart Continent company based in Vilnius, Lithuania. Egli has a university degree in political science. She has been gaining practical experience in political and economic research since the beginning of the 2020 and specializes in the fields of social topics, education, gender issues, etc. Together with the colleagues and managers of the company, she has taken a part in generating different projects for companies of both public and private sectors. And in TInnGO project, they have established a Baltic hub and analyzing the education and employment issues with an emphasis on smart transport and mobility. The word is yours, Egli.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you see my slide?
Yes, we hear you and you see the slide.
Great. So I will ask my colleague Eva to begin, and later on I will take her with the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I will start first, then my colleague Agla. So today we will present you our research about gender issues in higher education and specifically in STEM-related studies. First of all, I will start about our hub. So during the TInnGO project, we are working in Baltic Hub. Agla, next slide, please. So we are working in a Baltic hub. So the main area of our research is Baltic region, consisted of 3 states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And the main object of our hub is to contribute in gender and diversity equal employment opportunities in future transport system. And today we will present you only one part of our research. And today we will talk about understanding the reasons of why women rarely choose STEM-related studies. So as you see from the diagrams on the right, gender issues in employment and STEM education fields are really important in Baltic states. So we did a research. Next one. So we did our research in Baltic states, and our research was based on literature review and interviews. We have had 30 interviews with representatives from 30 schools, 10 from each country of Baltic states. And we tried to talk about 5 key points. So first was age and purpose of students when we usually start looking for career consultations. We try to indicate when children start to actively search for an information about career perspectives. When we asked about frequently asked questions and type of information to understand what questions are key and what answers usually looking for. When we talk about the main factors that encourage to choose STEM studies and aspects that could discourage to choose STEM-related studies, and also about the main criteria on deciding. And finally, we a lot talk about stereotypes, because as we see from our literature research, it is really an important factor that usually discourage to choose STEM-related studies, especially for women. So after the interviews, we have prepared some material that could be used for career consultants to help children to choose studies without any barriers and any barriers. So please, Agla, could you a little bit present what we found?
Yes, thank you, Eva. So I will continue with some data. So during our research, we were interested in different aspects of how and when students start being seriously invested in finding their career path. And according to the data we have gathered, the answers were partly fluctuating. However, it is evident that 15 years is an age when students start to look for career counseling activities and services. This could be related to the aspects of choosing subjects in schools. It means that while being 15, 16 years old, students are usually obliged to focus on certain fields that are they potentially go in deeper and even could take an exam later on. Hence, students at the same time are obliged to even narrow their spectrum for career choices early in their high school years. This aspect is so important as the students of that age could be extremely affected by external factors. I will talk about them later on in the presentation. Another interesting aspect, we have found that students are more interested in consultations regarding their future career path in general than specific topics. It means like more of a career path, possible career choices for them than a certain institution or a study program. This prompts an impression that despite the burden to choose one career path, students are not sure of what they want or what is best for them, at least at the time they are making the decision. With the help of representatives, certain aspects of what could influence the mindset of students if they are considering STEM field as a potential one to study. First of all, representatives of all three countries agreed on the most influential aspect to choose for a field: how a student is interested and how he is performing in exact sciences. So how good is he at that? Furthermore, Estonian representatives accentuated the importance of a family, whether by an advice or by following the footsteps of a family member who is already in the field. They could do the same in the future. Latvian and Lithuanian representatives listed prestige of the field as a significant factor as well. And lastly, only Lithuanian representatives put quick and easy employability as a relatively important aspect in their eyes. While talking about what factors discourage students from choosing this field, two main factors dominate across all three countries. So the difficult nature of the field and stereotypes. All three countries named this as very important factors, dominating in the first and second places. Interestingly, Lithuania mentioned the prestige of the field both as a motivating factor and this discouraging factor of STEM. Interestingly, this factor plays two roles in this country. So what else? Hence, without specific emphasis on the gender of the students, these aspects are in effect. Yes. Lastly, we were interested in general aspects of choosing career path in general. What are the criteria and stereotypes that could affect the mindset of youngsters? In general, students mostly decide basing by their interest, how they're performing, do they like it or not, etc. This was followed by a potential salary in the future of their career path, of their profession, parents' influence, future career perspectives, and parents' and present employment situation. It means that students, when deciding their career path, take into consideration many other aspects, not only their interest, although it's in the first place for them. However, many more are in act. Interestingly, but in general, students mostly decide based on like their interest, as I already mentioned. And interestingly, but the main stereotype named by the representatives which affect choices of a student was in existence of male and female professionals. It means that despite your gender, your sex, students see this stereotype as a dominating in the society. Certain aspects are in place as well. For example, in the eyes of the society, certain fields are seen as boring, not interesting, so not entertaining. So students are feeling pressure to choose the field which would be interesting, and they would enjoy studying this field. Some students see the prestige of the field as a guarantee for them to be great professionals and be employed soon, quickly, and easily. They put equality sign between the prestige of the field and future perspectives. Most of all representatives told that, well, the students choose STEM because of the possible future salary. So the field of future path for the students is also should be a profitable one. And lastly, we have talked about different aspects while choosing career path, etc. And we asked, so this is the situation. You have named different aspects, different different criteria on deciding the field. So what could be done for the people who are young, who are undecided, who could be affected by different factors? What could be done for them so that they could be less affected by those factors, and what they could choose, for example, a STEM field if it's very interesting for them and if it's a potential one, if they are interested in that. So the answers were targeted at creating more possibilities to know more about the field, because sometimes the field seems an alien for the people, especially when they are not going deeper into it. The words of the society, of parents, of family, of teachers could be very affecting. So what we have listed for the representative to use, for example, so there are study trips, meetings with experts and employers in the fields, specifically practical activities and events, scholarships for the students who, for example, are trying to be professionals in this field, and presence of best examples. So these are the things that representatives were naming that could encourage students not to be afraid to fight the stereotypes, not to be afraid to, for example, not to use the advice of the family, or not to follow the footsteps of the family members. We should bear in mind that the mind of the youngsters are very sensitive, and they are being affected by such, for example, an important factors in the eyes of adult person. So these are the things we have gathered. I hope you enjoyed our presentation. So I guess I will end up here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We move on at once here because we need to finish 1:15. So next presentation is about building capacities on how to integrate a gender dimension in the context of scientific research and innovation, and the Gender Equality Academy project experience. And it's Natasha Sega from Venice, Smart Venice, who will present. She holds a master degree in local development in the University of Padua, Italy. And during her studies, she spent 6 months in the Radboud University of Nijmegen in Netherlands, where she deepened her knowledge on gender studies, and other 5 months in Croatia as an intern among the NGO specialized in projects on sustainable tourism and local development. And she is a part of the Smart Venice team since 2019 as a project manager of different Horizon 2020 projects. She has been involved in the Gender Equality Academy project since its beginning, covering different roles from the design of the e-learning component of the project to the monitoring and evaluation of the entire capacity building program. The floor is yours, Natasha. So, and try to keep time so we can finish in time.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me and can you see my screen?
Yes, I hear you and we see your screen.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your kind introduction, and thank you for organizing this super interesting event. I hope you will enjoy my presentation as well as I have enjoyed the previous one from my colleagues. So my name is Natasha Sega, and I'm part of the Smart Venice team, who is a partner of the Gender Equality Academy project. My presentation today will give a short overview of the Gender Equality Academy project experience on how to integrate the gender dimension in the content of scientific research and innovation. Just trying to. Okay. Just to give you a few words about the project. So the Gender Equality Academy is an Horizon 2020 project which has developed and implemented high-quality capacity building program on gender equality in research and innovation and academia. It was built on the knowledge and on a highly experienced consortium, of which you can see the logo at the bottom of this slide, but also on the knowledge and expertise generated from the previous EU-funded projects and programs on institutional and structural change. Just to mention, I would like also to thank my colleague Maria San Giuliano, who helped me with this presentation, and also with whom I have collaborated along the project. So the Gender Equality Academy was designed with keeping in mind the fact that there are different challenges in the gender equality field, especially in academia, because there are many gender equality projects, and there is a great gain experience in this field, but there are still some challenges to be tackled. For instance, there is still a large difference of the gender expertise in performing organization in different countries in Europe, and still a small proportion of research and practitioners that are expert in the methodology and the content of the gender equality. So keeping these challenges in mind, we decided to inspire our the whole capacity building program by literature on the feminist pedagogies, adapted then to an institutional and organizational work. These perfective principles that are reported in this slide that you can see transpose this well-known orientation toward a transformative, non-hierarchical, and experience-based learning. That is the core of the feminist pedagogies. Therefore, our goal is to sustain our participants in becoming change agents in their organization, in their working spaces, and therefore collectively then promote the gender plus equality in their own institution. So starting from this principle of the feminist pedagogies, we design what we have called our quality standard booklet. And this was based on from our partners on a huge work on a literature review, consulting 28 relevant sources coming from, for instance, UN and UN Women reports, the Hague work, but also coming from documentation and publication from the relevant EU-funded project as the King project, the Opera project, and so on. From this first work, we identify an initial set of 179 standards that were reduced to 40 after 2 rounds of consultation with partners and international experts. Additional to these standards, there are 19 criteria were identified for defining a qualified trainer profile. The Gender Equality Academy Quality Standard Booklet is now under revision. and it will incorporate all the lessons learned that were collected along the last 3 years. But what has been the Gender Equality Academy rollout in practice? So we experienced and experimented different formats, as you can see. We started by differentiating face-to-face and online training. Then, due to COVID-19, we had to translate all the formats in an online setting. So we had 28 online training that are long session that are very highly participative. They can go from a half-day session up to a 3 days, a session divided in 3 days. Then we had 15 workshops that are usually shorter than the online training and more participatory. We also experimented virtual roundtable. We had webinars, online summer schools, train the trainer session, and 2 distributed open collaborative courses that are self-paced course, online courses, and 1 course is upcoming. I will talk about it a bit later in my presentation. Just to mention, we had the pleasure to get the valuable contribution from Diamond researchers in our first doc, and we still thank them very much. As you can see, there are different topics were tackled during the G Academy rollout, but today we are going to focus mostly on gender in science and research content. The example that I want to bring to your attention today is the one of the Gender in Research Weeks. That is made of a series of online training that were rolled out and implementing along 1 month last spring, specifically on how to integrate sex and gender dimension in research content. Their aim indeed was to present and to our participants the relevance of including gender and sex variables in research contents and to increase their awareness in this topic. Just briefly, here you can see you have the list of the 6 online trainings that were implemented in these Gender in Research Weeks. Maybe, as you can see from the slide, they are all linked one to each other. So the first one was more a basic training aimed at familiarizing the participants with the basic concept and definition of integrating sex and gender in research content, and it was the prerequisite for attending and participating to all the other trainings. The second one was going a bit more in detail with these 4 case studies from the STEM fields, mobility, human-computer interaction, robotics, and so on. And then we have a very focused one on the topic of health and medicine, while the last 3 were again even more in-depth session from the second one, dedicated each one to a specific research field. Just to give you some number about these trainings, we had a total of 212 registrants, among which 125 participated, and almost the 80% were fully satisfied with the training received. Although these are very are good results, we believe that this area is where gender equality work is more needed, because there is still limited awareness even in the training demand from research performing organization, and the topic is being often confused with gender balance in research teams, which is, of course, a different topic. This perception is also underlined by these slides that shows the result of the exit questionnaire that we used to send after every training. In fact, these results are actually coming from the whole online training of 2021, not just from the Gender and Research Weeks. So as you can see, although there is a very good percentage of participants who declare that their understanding of gender issues in research and innovation has increased, we believe there is still space for further capacity building in this topic. Very briefly, the second example that I would like to bring to your attention that we tried during the G Academy project is the summer school organized by the Polytechnic University of Madrid about gender cities and planning process on how to integrate the gender and sex dimension in climate, energy, and mobility. This summer school had a duration of 5 half days and with different learning objectives, but I would like to bring your attention on the importance that this summer school gave to the supporting participants in working on concrete research projects or ideas, and to get really a sense of what integrating gender and sex dimension in research contents means in practice. It was a successful summer school and training, and participants were really enjoying it. And due to this success, the Polytechnic University of Madrid decided to design and is going to roll out a short online course on integrating gender in sustainable housing design. It will be available from this December, so next month, in the doc platform that you will find in the slide. The link is there. It's not a long training. It is in total 1.5 hours divided in these 3 parts. So if you're interested in knowing more about this topic, you are welcome to surf in this platform and enroll in it. Okay, these are my last 2 slides, then I will stop. I just wanted to mention that in case you are interested in knowing more about our trainings, there is a YouTube channel of the project in which you can find already more than 30 recordings from the different training formats, and they are also divided in playlists, and there is one specific on sex and gender dimension in research contents. Last but not least, if you are interested in our program, from December in our website there will be an interesting practical tool where you can find the full compilation of material from the Gender Equality Academy project. I will end up here, and thank you for your attention. Looking forward to your question.
Thank you very much, Natasha. We should just do 5 minutes. I got a message from Francis here, says we should do just 5 minutes, question and answers. Yes, that's fine. I can't see any questions, but I have one question for Natasha and also for your other course. But what I've thought about when you said you had these summer courses and training, I just wonder who are the attending, who are the participants on the courses? Do you reach both men and women and different ages, or are there just young women entering these courses, or majority of women, or how does it look like?
Yes, thank you, Lena, for your question. So in general, our target group is it's constituted by different employment position, but mostly to research performing an organization and research funding organization. And usually, regarding the age, the pool is really different. So we managed to reach people from different age groups. Of course, like in the case of summer school, we used to ask our participants about their accessibility, meaning that having people from different ages, of course, this brings also to different possibility of attendance, especially for online sessions. So we try to keep always our session, as you say. I've spoken about half days, especially due to these issues of also having also other working due obligation and so on. So to do not just include and give the possibility only to the youngest to participate. Regarding the gender, we have tried a lot during the 3 years of the project, also through dedicated sessions, to engage more men in working in gender equality. Of course, in some sessions we had a good number of male attendees, but the majority is always made of women. For trying to working on this aspect in the train the trainer sessions, we included different male trainers, also to start to overcome this prejudice that working on gender is only for women. Of course, it's a long work.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. And
Thank you.
I have a question to all of the presenters. Can you turn on your cameras, all of you? Andre and Egle and Kat, are you still there? Yes. You all have presented challenges and barriers, and you have also presented good examples and suggestions to overcome the challenges. I have one question. What do you think is the most important? This is a question that all researchers hate to have, because they can't say just one thing. But I want you to select one suggestion or recommendation to start with, to change, if we are to change.
I can try to answer very, very briefly. I think the most important thing is the continuous commitment. It's not like gender diversity balance is something like one-off task. Okay, we went to the academy, we did the training, we had this GADA last year, and we are done now. This is about continuous long-term work, and I think this is the most important thing, and probably the most challenging thing. It's the task that's not going to, it's never done. It's never done. It's never enough.
Yeah.
So that's all from me. Hope that
That's
answers
for you.
question.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
It's not
Yes, I
optimistic.
agree. I agree.
Me as well. I would say the continuation and the continuous work with not only younger generation we are targeting at, but the people who are working with the younger generation. They ought to be very interested in the persistent and willing to perform real results, not just metaphorically, not just formally, but in general. The work must be sincere. So as long as we as adults, we as a person, as a people who are able to do something, as long as we want to do something and sincerely work with our tasks and towards our goals. This is the main thing, to have motivation, I guess, and persistency as well, as I said.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And just to, if I can add something, also from my side, I would say both the answer of Kat and Egle were, of course, right. I agree with both of them. And I would say also that it is important working on different layers. So, for instance, talking about age, I really appreciate that Egle presented that work with the younger generation before my presentation. So we have worked more with researchers. So it is really important to continue to work with different layers, both in terms of age and also including different genders in it.
Thank you very much, all of you. I think we have to leave and go back to the main session now for the for the end part, the final part of this conference. Thank you very much for attending and presenting. See you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.